Mr. Igal Una, who is the Director General of Israel's National Cyber Directorate. It's a big honor to have Igal with us today, and you may have seen him recently at the Cybertech Global in Tel Aviv. He was a keynote for that event. We're very excited to have Igal sharing with us some of the things that his directorate and some of the steps that they are taking in order to prepare us better for the cyber crisis amongst the pandemic crisis. Igal, please take it away.
Hi, thank you, and hi everybody. It's a little weird to run a speech like that, but hey, it's weird times, and we're trying to adjust, and I hope that we're making it with adopting to the new way of conducting meetings and coming together. And thank you very much, Amir and the Cybertech guys, for having this event. It's really unique and very important, specific in these times to discuss about cyber security, cyber threats, and how to mitigate it. What I try to describe in the coming minutes is how Israel, led by the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, is handling the current situation in the world, and Israel specific, from the cybersecurity perspectives. And I must begin with saying that we always talk about the cybersecurity as kind of epidemic. And I have even slides to show that. But before that, hey, this is how we see today's cybersecurity. It's never a dull moment for our guys, for the cybersecurity, government, private sector, public sector. Everyone is busy with their hands full of work, so no isolation, no relaxing at home or going to think about the future. We are in the middle of a battle, and the battlefield is mixed with many elements, as I'm going to talk about. So when I usually talked about the cybersecurity in past months, even less than a year ago, I described the analogy of cybersecurity as epidemic. Back then, it was, I think, June or July last year, we used the measles epidemic, or pandemic even, to describe the analogy of how cyber epidemics deal with the biological one. Unfortunately, foreseen the future, and now we are handling both the biological and the cyber epidemics, but the need for a vaccine is still there. And we meet all kinds of threats coming from this situation. Talking about the threats and the cybersecurity, we must always begin with focusing on the main threats. So we see that the RDP use is up by 41%. Enterprises use VPN up by 33%, and it goes even in higher numbers. Everyone needs to keep on working, connecting from home, connecting from other facilities. Even the INCD is now spread to 5 different facilities, and we need to work also from home whenever it's possible. And it's not only for us. You see the Shodan reports show the exposure, the VPN exposure going rapidly up. And we see immediately, like in the biology world, we see immediately the microbes, the viruses following this phenomena very quickly, even faster than the cure. So we see some of the checkpoint, Kaspersky and others showing how the registration of new Zoom domains, fake Zoom domains are rising up. We see in checkpoint research how malicious discussions rising up and meeting the level of the global trend, the authentic discussions. We see the corona-related attacks, the percentage out of the overall percentage, and it's tremendous. And I feel that we're going to see even more, as we read that many students, high school students, and even elementary school students now out of school in these days. So they're bored, they have a lot of leisure time, and they use it, unfortunately, some of them, but in growing portions, to hack or to try to hack, and they cause small damage, but with a mass, with a high volume that brings it to a real problem. We even published our own, you see examples of our own reports of how the corona situation or the corona crisis is exploited and abused by malicious actors, again, from countries, the usual suspects, from the cybercrime, from the state actors, rogue states, and of course with the more hacktivists or hackers or board students, all of the above. So when the INCD first met with this crisis, we still have, let's say, our day job. We still need to protect the critical infrastructures. We still need to do everything that we've done very hectic before the crisis hit Israel. We had the third elections round just in the beginning of March, which seems as the longest month ever. So doing that, we already began to prepare to new missions. And I'm going to show you now the seven main missions that the INCD took on its shoulders during the corona. First of all, and the most important, is to secure the business continuity of the healthcare sector. This is the most important sector now, and some of its parts are already allocated or defined as critical infrastructures. But now the attack surface is much wider and much more danger and need to be taken care of. But it's not. It doesn't stop there. The second is securing the critical supply chains, mainly air and maritime. We just heard that yesterday El Al, the Israeli airline, is beginning to bring in an air train from China by 11 Dreamliners, a lot of supply. Now, this supply should come and get into the healthcare supply chain and to get to the patients, and we need to see that nothing interrupts in the way. Third is, as I mentioned, everyone is going to work from home and to get services from the government and others from home or from not usual places. So we need to secure the eGov services with all remote access, and not only the eGov, but any critical services, banking, for example, to make sure that remote access is not compromised. Another one is to make sure that there's a fluent and smooth internet under mass telework. We heard about the many countries approaching Netflix and asking, begging, for reducing the resolution of the series and films to make sure that the internet will go uninterrupted. So there are other dangers, other risks coming to the internet broadband, and we need to make sure that no malicious actors will take advantage and abuse it. Another one is securing the food and medical production and distribution. Israel can produce and distribute most of its needs with the medical supplies and with the food and the beverage and other basic needs. But we need to make sure that all these digital processes are well secured. The sixth one is ensuring the fully operational cybersecurity industry to support public and private sectors. I'm going to focus on that very shortly, but it's very important to make sure that not only the government, but also the private sector, is even some of the public sectors, having their cybersecurity services from private sectors, private companies. So we need to make sure that they can still continue to give this service on the highest level. And last but not least is to secure the R&D of the coronavirus solutions, if it's vaccine, biological vaccines, or high-tech solutions. And Israel, as a startup nation and a high-tech country, we have, fortunately, a lot of great ideas. Most of our Ministry of Defense R&D processes immediately diverted to produce and to develop and to find new ways how to identify patients, identify sickness, and how to deal with the vaccines. All these processes are vulnerable. They can be attacked, and ransomware and all the other problems that we meet, so we need to secure them. So only 7 missions, but bear in mind that they're all above our day job, critical infrastructures, all the things that we still need to do. So all of this operation needs a command and control, and remember, also they are bind to the rules of social distancing and all these other regulations. And we open a strong command and control. We are part of the short list of the government main agencies that work almost uninterrupted during this crisis. And we deal with a lot of aspects that we haven't dreamt of dealing with it. You see in this slide that some of the numbers, and they are growing on a daily, of numbers that we need to deal with that we haven't dealt before. For example, coronavirus test labs. We have almost 29 of them in Israel. In order to run the tests fluently and continuously without interruptions, we need to make sure that they're not attacked. New subscribers to the INCD risk assessment scanning tool. We have a scanning tool that we showed in the Cybertech in Tel Aviv just a couple of months ago. It looks like decades ago, but it was only 2 months ago. And we already needed to, in less than a month, to get into this system, which is a very complicated system, another 136 of these companies, big companies. We have 17 dedicated alerts. We have 52 new organizations that are now getting what the other critical infrastructure gets. And it's not a simple thing to do, and we need to do it overnight. Joint auditing activities and other, we're going to focus on a couple of them. First is issuing alerts and guidelines. And we immediately began with issuing this, for example, it's in Hebrew. I'm sorry that we didn't translate all of it. Some of it we have, I'll mention it later on. But this is an example of collaboration apps like Zoom that we're now using, or Teams or others, how to use it securely. And as we already know and we see and we even experienced, it has too many vulnerabilities that need to be taken care of, which can be taken care of pretty easily. But the people now, by hundreds of thousands that using it, need to be aware and understand what should they do. Tonight we have the Israeli, the Jewish holiday of Passover, the big ceremony. Now every family will celebrate it separately, but everyone going to join it with Zoom or other kinds of apps. It's a big risk that we need to make sure that no one will take advantage of. Another is phishing, voice phishing, and other phishing issues. As I described, we see it growing by exponential numbers, and we have, of course, best practices and advises how to mitigate it and how to deal with that. And the last example is how to safely work from home. Again, nothing new, but we needed to pack it up and distribute it and push it to the public that they are starving for it, and make sure that it's accessible and everyone can get it very easily and implement it. That's the most important thing. Another thing is, for example, how I described how to deal with the new high-tech solutions or R&D of vaccines. This is example of the Israeli application, the official application that calls the Hamagen, the shield, that helps everyone to see if they cross the way with a patient or with a sick coronavirus person, and to alert that you crossed the way with this guy, so you need to isolate yourself, you need to check for symptoms and so on. This is, by the way, it's not connected to anything. It's just getting the database of all the epidemic researchers, investigations database, and compare it on the cell phone, on the mobile, with your own data, and it doesn't send the data outside. But as we understand, it can be very dangerous from the privacy issues and other issues. So we engaged in the early stages of the design and building of this application. I must say, it delayed the launch of this application in a couple of days. 6 or 7 days. But we made sure, and you see on the right side, one of the Israeli major white hackers, Ran Barzik, auditing it or making a scrutiny of this application before we launch it and say, okay, it's good enough. Nothing is perfect, but it's good enough to use. And now it's already spread by hundreds of thousands, and it saves lives, literally. But also secure, not just saving life, but securing the patients, the users from cyber attacks. As I mentioned, the cyber industry is a major, a very critical element in the overall Israel approach and strategy of cybersecurity. So we made a special focus on how to make sure that this industry can continue, still work under these conditions. So on the first night that the government began to issue emergency orders of how the Israeli space, how Israel should work, we inserted the cyber industry, as you can see here, as part of the exemptions, as part of the those who can still and should, by the way, still work and still be operational during this restraints and this isolation, all the other needs of social distancing and others. So we made sure that all cyber defense, by the way, not only all cyber, but all cyber defense and information security are part of it. And we're still seeing a lot of companies that approach us and ask us for guidance, and we help them on a daily basis.
Thank you for your cooperation. So a few words about the INCD, the Israeli National Cyber Directorate. Basically is aimed with two tasks. First would be assuring the cybersecurity for the entire market. That means critical infrastructure, government ministries, essential services, but not only that, also including the entire economy, small and medium businesses, private citizens, etc., obviously in different level of engagement. Now, another task is that we have to assure that Israel has the right cyber infrastructures. And when I say infrastructures, I mean both human resources, workforce, and researchers, technological edge, both for the government and in the universities and in the industry, cyber industry. And also we are responsible to have the legal framework that will enable us and the private sector to work. We're basically a one-stop shop. We're coordinating with the intelligence community, with foreign partners, and of course with the private sector. Just to give you an idea of where we are situated right now, we have about a little bit over 9,000 people infected with corona. 153 are in the emergency room in the intensive care unit, and we have unfortunately 60 people that have died because of the corona. We have severe travel restrictions, and we're going for the holiday quarantine. And we have the Passover, and in Europe, of course, Passover and Easter will be celebrated soon. There is a big diversion of efforts towards the corona-related solutions. Factories are starting to manufacture, it could be respiratory apparatuses and application developed for that purpose. And if we look at the cyber map, what happened during COVID, there is obviously a huge increase in the attack surface because of increase in teleworking. There is a big increase in public interest in anything that has to do with corona. And obviously the rivals are abusing the weak spots. There is a big need in the whole of government for remote coordination, both intergovernment, but also with the private sector. There are new essential services that we have identified, services that are now currently dealing that haven't been identified as essential or as critical, but are now very important for the fight against corona. So we have to map, scan, and also make sure that those enterprises are secure. We also have new sensitive applications that we need to make sure that they are cyber secured. And another thing that we did here in Israel is that Cyber Directorate has been declared as an essential service, but not only the Cyber Directorate, also the cyber industry and the private sector doing or giving cyber services, so that they will be able to continue working even when there are travel restrictions. I would now like to pass the floor to Itai to talk about remote work challenges. Itai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yossi. I will open my camera so you can see me. Hi, everyone. My name is Itai. I'm leading the technology part and threat intelligence for the Israeli CERT. And today I would like to give you a presentation about the remote work challenges, a work from home situation that we have all encountered during this coronavirus pandemic. I know that a lot of water passed under the bridge since the beginning of this pandemic, and everyone is talking about work from home. So I'll try not to repeat what everyone is saying and you've read about it all over the place, but to give you actionable items and points to think about for how to secure your organization and how to deal with your employees while working from home. Yossi, are you presenting or am I?
Sorry, no, you are.
Okay, so just a second.
You mean the slides? You want me to pass the slides? Sure.
No, it's okay. I'll do it.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry for the delay. I'm Walter Kirillason.
Good to have you, Walter.
Boker Tov. How are you?
We are great, thank you.
Good.
Sorry. Please go follow the discussion. I'm following what Giorgio is saying.
Okay, so I will continue now. I guess you are seeing what I'm presenting. So we'll start with a presentation about work from home challenges. The agenda of the presentation will be talking a bit about the challenges ahead of us, really in a nutshell. Could you please mute your microphone, Walter? Thank you. Afterwards, I will present a solution landscape. Solution not by vendors, but solution by architecture. How can we connect from home? The third topic of the presentation will be reviewing the threat and attack vectors, especially for three key elements in the process: the endpoints, the connection, and the gateway. This will be followed by extra recommendations, which are more general and not specifically to the endpoints or connections or the gateway. Afterwards, we'll talk about the threat landscape, what threat actors are actually doing today with some examples. I will wrap it up with the key takeaways. Again, I will try to do it as actionable as possible for you as CISOs to know what you can enable to the organization and what you should stand and fight against the management if they ask you to do, or at least for you to have it under your tool set for you to decide and manage the risk in a better way. So that is, and let's go. About the challenge. First of all, it happened overnight. No one expected it. No one foreseen it and said we are about to have an epidemic. Let's prepare and have an annual plan for next year. It happened overnight, and we found ourselves, everyone, in the same boat, same situation, we cannot work from the office. We need to work from home. And as it came, it will also disappear. I mean, it came overnight. It was not a permanent situation. It will also disappear in a month, 2, 3, 4, I don't know when, but it will go away eventually. It's a temporary situation. And we need to keep that in mind, because every change that we are doing to the organization and the organizational network for now to enable remote work, we will need to roll back after it will be over. So keep that in mind. I will elaborate it on later, but keep that in mind that you need to roll back at the end, and it has a lot of things that need to be prepared and backed up for. Another thing is, because it was an ad hoc situation, most of organizations were not ready and prepared with equipment, with laptops, with enough VPNs, with enough bandwidth to enable all the workers, all the employees to work from home. Thus, they had to enable the bring your own device approach. Let the employees bring their own laptops and have a small adjustment of transportation to make them a work laptop. And it's a big issue, security-wise. Again, I will elaborate it later. I'm just covering the challenges now. I will try to give points on how to keep your organization cyber secure and corona-free at the same time. What can you do and not do, or at least give you stuff to think about. We will talk about the scale up. A lot more users means a lot more technical challenges. Again, bandwidth, VPN, or TeamViewer, or whatever licensing issues that you might have on one hand, and new users, which need to be educated about how to work from remote. It's a different kind of environment than the organizational network, and they must be educated about it. And maybe to answer some acute dilemmas that you have about how to act from today for tomorrow. So let's see the solution landscape. I try to simplify it as much as I can into 3 main criteria. The first one, at the top left corner, is the offline. It's a solution. I don't believe that any of you will implement it. Offline means that you will save all the necessary file to the employee desktop, have him work offline, and synchronize it every once in a while to the organizational network. It's an option, so I put it there. I don't believe anyone will do it. At the top right corner, we'll have the indirect access. Indirect access means that the employee will not reach the organizational network directly. It will serve, it will work, he will work with if it's mail, an OWASP server, if it's the network itself, a VDI or a Citrix or any virtual environment or any proxy that you give him to reach and not directly the endpoint, or maybe you will let him just to read files. So that's indirect access. This presentation is not about indirect access. If you already have products that support indirect access, good for you. I'm here to talk about direct access. Direct access means that you will enable a VPN connection, a virtual private network connection from the employee laptop to the organizational network, and how to do it. Okay, we'll talk how to do it. Second approach is a remote desktop access. Applications such as TeamViewer, PC Anywhere, VNC, or an RDP connection, meaning actually sharing the endpoint with the laptop at home. It's much riskier. We will talk about it too. If you have direct access platform, great. Maybe you don't have to do anything, or maybe you need to buy more license, talk with the ISP about the bandwidth, and do some corrective actions about bring your own device. If you don't have the platform, you need to establish one. You will probably go for a quick and dirty solution. Our recommendation here is use a proxy or a DMZ. Don't let them connect directly to the endpoint, but to a proxy in the middle. I would even go and say break the protocol. For example, if you implemented a VPN overnight, don't let the VPN reach the endpoint, but let it reach a proxy server. And then instead of working over SSL, break it and from the proxy server go to the endpoint using an RDP. It will make the attacker life much harder. So that's basically about the solution landscape. This slide is talking about the equation of security versus usability. You probably want to be at the green rectangle, which means good usability and low risk, and you need to manage your risk and how to do that. What do you enable? What do you don't? What you don't? What connection will you open? What sessions are you okay with? So everybody need to go through this matrix and ask itself, how can I reach the green rectangle? I will now go and review some threats and attack vectors. We will start with the endpoints. The main threats about the endpoint actually is piggybacking malware, which means that the employee laptop might have a malware in it, maybe because it's served into some fishy website, or use it to its own needs and not work needs. Maybe because he installed a software which is not which was not checked correctly. Our biggest fear is ransomware. That the ransomware could piggyback over the employee laptop to the organizational network. How will the piggybacking happen? If it's on the laptop, it could use the open session to go inside the organization. That's the meaning of piggybacking. Data leakage is also a threat, but it's not as acute as ransomware and malwares and ransomware especially. It will not stop the business continuity. Another two vectors are credential theft and session token theft. Employees that are working from home and are not aware of the risk and work methods from working from home could have their credentials stolen. It could be by social engineering, it could be by a phishing mail, it could be by any kind of methods, and the session token could be theft, and the attacker could ride on it. So our recommendations, first and foremost, basic cyber hygiene. If the employee is using an organizational equipment, a laptop, you can force the policy over the laptop. You can have your own antivirus, which is updated and scanning daily. You can have your operation system updated with all the patches. Maybe even implement an EDR. The problem occurs when the employee is bringing its own device. How can you force the organizational policy on a private laptop? The answer is basically you can't. What you can do, however, is have some guidelines, some basic guidelines, and ask the employee to follow them. Tell the employee that if it will not follow the guidelines, you will not let him connect from home. It should be very simple. For example, have an antivirus, any kind of antivirus. It could be Windows Defender by native with Windows operating system, or any other kind of antivirus, but active. and scanning on a weekly basis. It could be an awareness training. No employee should connect from remote if he has not been through any awareness training. It's important, some basic hygiene. Don't surf over the neighbor's Wi-Fi, for example. Harden your router and how to do that. Some basic hygiene. You can ask that from the employees. It's very, very, very important. I try to highlight in bold what I think is important what is most important out of all the recommendations. So another thing is preventing simultaneous access to internet and organizational network. Again, you don't know where the employee is surfing into. You most certainly don't want the employee to surf into some fishy website at the time he is working. If something malicious will go in the computer, it could directly go into the organizational network using the open session, piggybacking malware again. So split tunneling, that's the phrase for it. You don't want to do that. Another big issue is multi-factor authentication. Force your employee to have a multi-factor authentication login to the network. If you have such methods, great. If you need to implement such a method right now, it's not that complicated. You can use any one of the big vendors' OTP smartphone software, such as Google Authenticator or Microsoft or any other big one. The implementation is pretty convenient. It could be done by remote. The employee only needs to download the file, scan some barcode, and it's pretty easy. And it makes the attacker life a lot harder. Even according to Microsoft's recent publication, more than 99% of the attacks could be stopped by activating a multi-factor authentication. Another thing, restrict access to known IP ranges and locations only. It's pretty tricky because you need to know everything you own. You need to know the organization assets. Then you need to let only the organization assets inside and keep all the rest out. So restrict whatever is not what's not belong to the organization or a provider that you are working with. So as I said, it's pretty tricky, but it's very recommended to keep track of the assets with some list. We will now go to the connection. Some threats and attack vectors about the connection. Our main threats are session hijacking. If we are talking about the cyber domain, data leakage, again, will not stop the business continuity, so I will leave it for now. And as far as the production goes, load and availability. The recommendations are for the cyber domain, for session hijacking, limit the session time. Limit it for 1 hour, 2 hours, 8 hours. I don't know, depends on your business, depend on what you need the employee to do. But limit it. So after a certain time, it will be over for both the employee and the attacker if he was able to hijack the session. Next bullet. It sounds scary, but apply PFS with AEAD as your cipher suite. I know it sounds scary, and it really doesn't really matter what it actually said. It's one of the best cipher suites in the market, and it's just a checkbox in the firewall. So ask your IT guy to click on this checkbox and apply it. Another thing, create new certificate and limit its lifespan. This is kind of a smart tip, because if you are using your organizational certificate, it will be valid. You will renew it every year. It will be valid forever, I guess. If you will create a new certificate, it will only be valid for 1 year. At the beginning, I said we are in a temporary situation, and sometime soon we will need to roll back. Rolling back is not that easy. So you might forget stuff such as revoking certificates or revoking equipment. This is kind of a measure that makes your life easier because after 1 year, the certificate will be revoked. Or if you have a certificate now, limit its lifespan. It could be done. So that's a nice trick. Now about the load and availability, about production. Talk to your ISP. Make sure the infrastructure supports the load because all the cyber and business in the world, and if it doesn't support the load, no one will be able to work. Just imagine, as you might know, that 20 concurrent connections are not as 200 concurrent connections or 2,000 concurrent connections. So make sure the infrastructure supports the load. Otherwise, all what we are talking about doesn't matter. Last bullet, very important, save logs. You will do a lot of changes to your networks in the recent time, in the recent future. So save the logs. Save both the configuration of what you are changing and what the origin was, and save the logs to monitor. Monitor the network, monitor the firewall, and monitor the certificate transparency logs. Certificate transparency logs means that no one is trying to mimic or spoof your certificate. So you can monitor that and see that no one is trying to spoof your organization and have some phishing in behalf of your organization. Next bullet, next slide, about the gateway. Our threats are basically authentication bypass and application vulnerabilities. I will start with the latter one, application vulnerabilities. In 2019, it was, I think, the worst year for VPN vendors security-wise. A lot of the big vendors were breached with critical vulnerabilities, and we've seen attacks all over the world using the VPN as an attack vector. So please, 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 please keep it updated. Whatever VPN you have, keep it updated because they have a lot of vulnerabilities in them. And you don't want the attacker to walk through the front door through using the VPN. So VPN and any other gateway that you're using, keep it updated, very important. Again, save the logs to the network. If you want to do an in-depth investigation, if you found that you have been breached, you want to have some IR investigation, you need logs for that, both for the system, network, and for the equipment itself. So if you are talking about VPN, save the logs both for the VPN, the system of the VPN, the logins, the network of the VPN, save network of the firewalls, save Active Directory, everything. A very important recommendation is centrally manage remote access. I said it earlier, I will say it again, don't allow direct connection to endpoints. Use a gateway, use a proxy, break the protocol, limit the privileges of the user that is connecting. Maybe even divide it into home users and local network users. Do your risk management, but remember that you need both two things to keep in mind. You need to manage it, and it's easier to do from a central location, and you need to control it, not only manage it. You need to allow only what you have to. Now for some basic recommendations, some additional recommendations, more general. Home awareness. Don't allow connections from neighbors' Wi-Fi. Don't surf into fishy websites. Don't let your kid install games on the work laptop. Or if you're using your own laptop for work now, treat it like a work laptop and not a personal one. So some very basic cyber hygiene, which employees are not aware of. Another thing is extend password lifetime. I know it's kind of unorthodox. All the reason is saying change all the passwords as we speak because we're in a crisis, but I say no. And that's my opinion only. Because everyone is working remotely, because it's challenging for everyone. Cyber-wise, IT-wise, business continuity-wise, it's hard for everyone. Don't make it harder by locking users who forgot their password and make them round around their tail all day long trying to catch the IT guy to open it, and the IT guy needs to connect to the organization, and at the end, it will be worth and better. So extend the password lifetime. Give them another month, another 2. That's my opinion. Apply least privileges to address and applications allowed. Again, you need to know your business. You need to know your business and you need to know your assets. Then you need to map it and decide what is important, what is not, for each and every user. And give only the privileges that the user needs to have. I will skip to the almost last bullet, monitor critical accounts. After you have limited your privileges for users and for applications, you need to monitor these accounts. Service users, service accounts, admin users, everyone. You need to monitor and see if anything has changed. It's a very good sign of a breach. Next bullet, use existing method for file upload or download. In other words, don't do anything. Don't try to implement now and install a new sandbox, a CDR system, a mail gateway, or any other file sanitation method that you want to upload or download file from in such a way. If you have a sandbox, keep using it. Limit the users to only upload and download using the sandbox. But don't try to implement their very complicated systems. Don't try to implement them now, especially not that everyone is working from remote, but make the users, make the employees use what the organization already have and working. And don't open a direct access to upload and download files. In that matter, I will go to the bullet of mail forwarding to online services. If you don't have a mail gateway or any kind of mail sanitation method, you can forward your mail to online services such as Gmail or Office 365 or any other method, and have your mails checked over there, detonate your files in the mails attachment, detonate in the cloud. It will keep your organization much secure. If you have such a solution already, great. If you don't have a good mail solution, the quick and dirty solution is just forward it to online services. I will put a remark here. Please be sure that the data in the mail you receive can be forwarded to the cloud. And this is relate with the bullet we'll talk about now. If using a third-party cloud solution, be aware where the data sits. If you use a third-party cloud solution for mail or for storage or any other SaaS, security as a service solution, it's great. It could be great. If you trust your vendor, excellent. If your data is okay with being in the cloud, great, it could be a good solution. If you don't trust your vendor, or that your data is sensitive and you need to keep it on premise, be aware where the data sits. Be aware you configure it right. Be aware about the privacy licensing of these products, that they are not listening to the data. Be aware where the data is. Very important nowadays. Another very important issue. Every system needs an IT guy. At the end, systems are great as long as they are running. If you have a breakdown or an error and you don't have an IT guy on premise to fix it or available from remote to fix it, you're in a very, very, very big problem. So insist on it. Every IT that you have, map all the technical solutions that you need to have for business continuity in a work from home situation, and insist on the IT guys to support it. Backup. I told it once, I will say it again. Backup, backup, backup. It's a temporal situation. Backup all configurations and all the systems because you will roll back in the near future. Maybe not everything will need to roll back. Maybe we'll change our method of operation of how the business works. But I guess the vast majority of what the organization is doing will need to be as it was before the corona outbreak. So backup, both configurations and systems. About the threat landscape. I tried to make it pretty simple, but this is basically what we are seeing. Attackers exploiting, actually exploiting. So I'll start with phishing. A lot of the attackers are sending links of a live map. Inside this link, there's an attachment. Most of the times we see a zip file. Inside the zip, if you open it, there's a DLL that activates a malware, but a link to a live map. So as part of the awareness training that your employees must have is only clicking on official links, only the official live map, only official documents, only official things. Don't be tempted to open office documents about COVID-19, the situation in the US, the situation over there. Don't be tempted. A lot of phishing attacks are using this to lure the employees to open attachments or suspicious links, malicious links. A lot of mails about the corona, such as the buy masks for cheap, or we have a quick test you can run. We even saw corona surveys. Please fill in this survey, and we will tell you if you have any corona carriers or sick people around you. A lot of phishing attacks. Some of them are intended to have malwares in your organization, and surveys, for example, are intended to harvest credentials or details, steal details. Another thing, social engineering. We saw several phishing attacks. Phishing is voice phishing. That IT guys, IT employees received calls by IT of their organizations asking them to give them their credentials for the VPN because the IT want to check if it works or not. So I mean that all the employees in the organization received phone calls from allegedly the IT department asking for credentials. So be aware of phishing. Have your employees aware of such attempts. Don't give credentials over the phone. BEC, business email compromise. Attackers are trying to steal money, to impose as a CEO or CFO of companies and have transactions made by forging emails between two organizations and directing money to their own bank account. We're seeing a big rise in BEC, business email compromise attempts. So for the CFOs and CEOs of your organizations, give them this knowledge, this data. In this time, please be suspicious of any transactions and look at it once, twice, and even a third time. Remote access. All this presentation is about work from home, so remote access. VPN credentials. A lot of the organizations didn't have VPN implemented. So what they did is a quick and dirty solution. When you do a quick and dirty solution, you use local accounts and not the users of the network. So the Active Directory users. And when you use local accounts, usually the user picks a weak password. So in the wild, we've seen a lot of VPN credentials harvesting attempts using brute force, trying to guess the known passwords for VPN users, which were local accounts. Another thing is home routers attacks. A very, 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 very important issue is the home routers. Employees are unaware. I guess that almost none of them have hardened its home router, and attackers are exploiting it. They are attacking the home router, and then they can do one of two things. First is redirecting the DNS. So when the employee will try to surf the internet, he will be redirected to a malicious website. That's one thing. Second is mimicking a landing page of a VPN. So secure your home routers. Again, awareness for the employees. It's their own, you can do it. You can't do it. It's the employees, it's up to the employees to do it. Last thing is VC's invitations or remote access tools such as PC Anywhere and TeamViewer invitations for VCs for Zoom meetings, Zoom crashing, Zoom bombing, all this kind. Please make sure that you don't publish your VCs in the open, in the public, but only using a link directed to the one you want to connect. Have your employees not to click on any invitations that is of a direct access by a rat, such as a TeamViewer or PC Anywhere or any kind of these invitations. Again, awareness for the employees. The key takeaways that I want you to take from here is risk management. At the end, it's up to you to manage the risk and decide what you enable the organization and what you don't. And what's important here is the organization needs to work, but not at any cost. So please, do everything that's required for the organization to work, but do it securely. Don't limit the business needs, but find a compensatory way, find methods. Bring it up to the management, to the CEO. I know that you are under a lot of pressure, but tell them, I can do that, but I know that you want everybody to be connected at the same time, but I will not allow you to use PC Anywhere without a password. I will not let employees connect to the organization without having an awareness training. Awareness training is a must. So do everything, but insist on what matters.
After Nadav speaks with us a little bit about leadership in a time of a crisis, he is going to lead a one-on-one with none other than Admiral Michael Rogers, who is the former commander of the U.S. Cyber Command and the former director of the National Security Agency. Nadav, thanks for being here. Go ahead.
So, hi everyone. Happy to have you here at our first digital gathering of the Cybertech. Would be great if we could do it in person, but I think it's important that we do it anyways. These are unprecedented times, and sharing and speaking about the challenges of where we are is paramount and probably more important than ever before. These are definitely hard times. And I think that if you think about our digital history of the last few decades, never ever in human history has confidence and trust in our digital infrastructure been more important than now. I mean, if you think about an alternate reality, all the chaos or the edge of chaos that we have right now with COVID-19, without the incredible connectivity that we have, we'd be in a much more dire situation that we are in right now. And so our jobs, your jobs, has gone from important to critical overnight. The fact that we have 99% of the workforce at home continuing to do not everything, but many of the things that they would have been able to do in their office, face-to-face, physically, is what's keeping the world moving. And so what you are doing, what we are doing, has become more critical than ever. And our job is to keep the lights on. I think the first thing that we need to do in order to find how to keep the lights on is to try to understand where the threats are coming from. What are the attackers thinking about? And if you unfortunately think about it, Christmas came really early for the attackers in 2020. I mean, if you think about the new types of critical infrastructure, if you think about the home office, if you think about the fact that we have sort of a super evolution where overnight, 99% of the workforce is working from home. I mean, think about the opportunities for the attackers as the attack surface, the topology is just exploding and changing all the time. That brings a lot of opportunities. For the most part, we're seeing that our IT infrastructures are working, but let's not forget, we haven't stress tested this environment. And so over time, we're already seeing bugs in the system, but it doesn't matter how beautifully your VPN, your VDI, or BYOD or connectivity is working, we haven't stress tested the system. And so we'll see glitches and blips and even major problems in the future. I think connectivity is the new Achilles heel. I mean, if there's anything that you don't want to see right now or hear right now, the first thing is that you got the virus, your family got the virus, or that your Wi-Fi is out, right? That's sort of the scariest thing, or the second scariest thing that we can think about right now. And to top all that, we must take into consideration that this changing environment in many ways is going to dramatically increase the threat of malicious insiders. I mean, people are working from home. Nobody's overlooking their shoulders and seeing what they're doing. People may think that some things that weren't legit in the office are legit at the home. Some of them will be doing it from a benevolent perspective just because they want to get their work done. Some of them are going to become anxious as the economy deteriorates and may think about doing things that otherwise they wouldn't think of. And so we also need to think about malicious insiders within all this conundrum that we're all facing right now. And so at TEAM8 and our portfolio companies, we try to imagine some of the immediate challenges that everybody's going to see or everybody's seeing already, and how that's going to evolve in the next few weeks and months. You know, to begin with, the obvious thing, people, right? Your organizations are still made out of people, except that your people, your workforce is now at home. And so this question of productivity versus security has just become so much more important. And different companies have different solutions. Some of them are more resilient, some of them are not. The other thing that I imagine, or we imagine you guys are all thinking about, is what happened in this digital fog of war if we have a breach, if we have an incident, and we need to respond? What does IR look like in these crazy times? Another obvious is detection. And so detection has never been an easy task. Our security operations centers have always been overwhelmed almost with a lot of noise from the system, false positives, etc. But in this reality, it's much worse because there is no normal. And most of the detection systems are trying to create some kind of baseline and see abnormal. But if there's no normal, what's abnormal? And there isn't much normal in these times. And then finally, if you think about industrial sites, how do I run my factory, my machines, my SCADA systems, etc., if I can't even touch them, if I don't have the computer that controls them? There are obviously others, but these are sort of major things that we've been thinking about at TEAM8 in our portfolio companies, and trying to take solutions, ideas, products, and services that we already have and do the adjusting. So at Isolate, which was the TEAM8 isolation company, one of our portfolio companies, we're creating a light version that can easily take any machine and create a dual environment, one which is completely locked down and one which is more open to take down apps like Zoom, etc. At Signia, which is our IR and consulting firm, we are creating an assessment for work from home so that given this new infrastructure, given this new attack surface, we can assess where we are, where we overlook things, and beyond that, thinking about how do you create a digital war room in this environment? What do executives and leaders in a company think about right now? They're stressed for many more reasons. What is it going to look like if we have to come to a CEO of a company as a CISO and say, well, we have a problem? That's a bad day in the office anyways. How do you deal with it in this kind of environment? How do you prepare for it? And then on the detection side, at Elusive Networks, which is one of our portfolio companies at TEAM8, we've always thought that anomaly detection is not the way to tackle detection, but rather using deceptions everywhere in the network. And we think that in this environment, and specifically for malicious insiders, using these kinds of technologies has become more relevant and effective than ever. On the industrial side, we're expediting some of our capabilities for remote access. So the idea is, how do you create a remote access encrypted end-to-end for a critical infrastructure where you can actually take this environment and take it to the work from home environment? All these things are not inclusive and obviously are not addressing all of your problems. But again, we're trying to take the normal, see what we have, how can we adapt? But you know, at the end of the day, more important than anything is that as a leader in your organization, you don't just think about your technical responsibilities, but about your leadership responsibilities. As we say, with great power comes great responsibility. You have to think about your subordinates, your colleagues, your bosses, your family, etc. Because that's what it takes to be a leader in this time. And if you think about the bigger picture, I only want to say three things before I go to Admiral Rogers and get his perspective. But from my perspective, three things. Number one, zoom out. I know that you're under a lot of stress, but every once in a while, you just need to see the big picture. If you're just with your head in the trenches all the time, you'll miss the big picture. And the big picture may be something technical. It may be one of your, one of your execs that's under a great pressure, and that's where you need to be focusing your time right now. Or it may be thinking about the day after. Another thing that you need to think about is new terminologies and frameworks. Your priorities, your terminology, and your frameworks are not necessarily relevant for this time. So if you're just doing everything the same, just from home, please zoom out and rethink about that. And finally, you need to be at your optimal functioning. So you need to take care of yourself. If you're entrenched in this and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of the business. And that includes big things, but also trivial things like getting enough food, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, and working out. So that's what I have for you today. And with that, I want to invite my friend and colleague, Admiral Rogers, and ask him a couple of questions. So, Admiral Rogers, welcome on board.
Nadav, great to talk to you and everybody listening. I hope you're all healthy and working well as we try to work our way through this, quite frankly, none of us have ever had to deal with before.
Yep. So, Mike, first question. You've gone through a few crises in your lifetime. If you had to give one leadership advice, what's the most important piece that would be in this time of crisis?
Well, I don't know that there's only one thing. If I had to pick one thing, I always said to myself, project the kind of image you want the workforce to then use themselves, the way you interact with people, the things you prioritize on. I always thought to myself, how can I send the right message in every interaction I have with the team? Make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. We all understand, as we used to say in our previous lives, what commander's intent is. So what's the vision? What are we trying to achieve? And what's my expectation as a leader, and how both myself as well as the team, how are we going to achieve that? Although, I try to remind people, look, there's no one single answer. Last thing I would forget, I would also mention, and it's something you said, please don't just focus on the technology and the hardware. The single greatest resource most teams have is their people. And people need leadership.